What's up, guys? Welcome back to this week's episode of The Way.
There are a ton of benefits to living on the road full time, but some other challenges that you might not be aware of do make it a little hard at points. So we're going to take the shine off that apple and tell you the hardest parts about living on the road full time.
All right, so the first thing that we're going to talk about today is kind of a no-brainer, and it's not necessarily specific to living on the road, but there are aspects of it that make it a little more challenging when being on the road, and that's missing your family, being away from family. We have nieces and nephews back home and, a lot of other friends with children that we just love, and basically we're not around all the time. You're gonna miss milestones. It's already hard enough as it is to be away from family and friends, adult family and friends, but when you have little ones in the picture that you're not seeing on a regular basis, it can be a little bit sad at times and challenging to basically see them and then not, because they change so fast. You are gone for 6 months, a year before you visit home again, and they're already like a completely different person when you go back. So that's obviously a challenge whether or not you're on the road or just living far away. But the added challenge of being on the road is that it's not always as easy as just planning a trip back, because we're already kind of on a constant trip. So when we're trying to plan flights and stuff to make it home, we kind of have to take into account that we're basically going to be booking a flight somewhere that we might not have even booked where we're staying yet. It's just a whole other level of complication. There's just kind of all these added challenges that are presented when you're constantly on the move, as opposed to just necessarily like living far away. It can just be a little bit more difficult at times.
All right, so the second thing on our list today is you can't just go and kick it with some friends. We meet a lot of awesome people on the road, but we're kind of here and then we're gone, and so are they. So you may want to go grab a beer with a buddy, but unfortunately, this lifestyle just doesn't allow you to do that sort of thing. And it differs from when you move to a new place. You can eventually build those relationships and have new friends, but with the pace that we move from place to place, it really just doesn't allow us the opportunity to do that sort of thing.
Well, and like Adam said, we do make friends on the road and we hung out with people on the road, but it's a little different than like being able to call up like your old buddy or like my old friends from work that, I'm really close with, and being able to just go get coffee, go grab a beer, just kind of catch up with somebody that you're really familiar with. You're kind of always hanging out with people that you're in the process of building a relationship with, which is always fun. But there's something about being able to hang out with an old friend that you already have a long established bond with that you don't really get to experience when you're on the road. And yeah, I think we both kind of miss it.
Yeah, I can definitely say that, I wished at times I was able to hang out with my longtime friends. And it's a sacrifice that just kind of is an occupational hazard at this point.
All right, the next thing that we're going to talk about is things break, which obviously if you've owned a house or really ever even just lived in a house or an apartment, things break. That's pretty common when you're living in a moving vehicle that you're going to experience.
Bringing your house 70 miles an hour down the road. Yeah,
you might experience a couple more issues than you might in a residential house. The other added factor to that is that because we're constantly on the move, it adds an extra kind of stress factor. We just had a spring on one of our hydraulic jacks just snap a couple weeks ago. Like, we were working and we just heard this loud snap and we were like, what is that? And of course, it happened just a couple days before we had to leave, which it's not a tough repair, but getting the part, knowing where to ship it to, because we were about to be leaving, we had to figure out, are we actually going to be able to ship it to us in time? Do we need to just ship it to the next location? We ended up having to do that and then basically come up with a workaround to keep our jack up while we drove from Georgia to Florida instead of just fixing it. Point being, sometimes things break at inopportune times, given the fact that you have to physically move your house 5 to 7 hours down the road, for us once a month basically. And it can be pretty I don't know what the word is, but it can be
complicated.
It can be complicated. It can be very inconvenient at times to have the added factor of having to move your house while things might break, and you don't get to choose when that happens. So yeah, that can be a pain in the butt.
All right, so next on the list is there are a ton of great places that you should definitely check out in the US, but there are equally as many not so incredible places that you might want to pack up before you've even unloaded. So just keep that in mind. Even with the advent of the internet and being able to read digital reviews, there are still some things that slip through the cracks and can find you with a sense of feeling stuck in a place that you're staying at for, a month or more. It's not like when you live somewhere and you're moving, you can generally, filter through and
see it in person and vet it out, basically.
A lot of times when we're booking a stay across the country, we're not able to really, we just got to kind of take their word for it. So when we get there, it's always a surprise, whether it's good or bad.
Well, I think the essence of what we're saying is if you've ever booked a vacation and got to your hotel and you were like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, and maybe it's not horrible, but maybe it's just like, oh, it looked a little nicer or, whatever. It's kind of like, imagine that, but now you're staying there for a whole month or more. And basically, you kind of just get what you get at a certain point. You might be able to move or switch if it's like that bad, but for the most part, you probably already had to put down a deposit, pay things in advance, so you might just be stuck where you're at.
Yeah, just kind of got to eat it if you're wanting to change it, so...
All right, so now that brings us to talking about actual travel weekends. We work Monday through Friday. We have pretty much regular day jobs that we have to fulfill, and so that means that when we actually move locations, that we pretty much are utilizing one of our weekends here or there to actually complete that journey. A lot of our trips, we try to hit new states for the most part, so those are decently long drives, I would say. We probably average between 5 to 10 hour drives per move, and we move about once a month. So basically that means every fourth weekend we're packing up our entire house, driving it whatever distance that we have to drive it, and then completely unpacking it. Sometimes we get it done in a day, other times not so much, especially if it's, one of those times that something broke and it was unexpected. Those things happen all the time, and needless to say, those weekends are not very relaxing, and when you have to jump into work the following Monday, Adam can attest.
There's no sense of rejuvenation. No,
you pretty much feel like you went straight 2 weeks through, and you're pretty exhausted by the end of it. God forbid it falls on a week that you're like falling behind on work, or like there's extra things going on at work that you need to put extra hours in. We've had that where one of us has had to work while the other one is driving. It happens, and it can be stressful at times. And yeah, point being, travel weekends can be enjoyable. I'm not going to say that there's no plus sides to them. I think there's a lot, we generally get excited to go visit a new place. There's a lot of things we do to kind of get into the mood of being on the road. We'll listen to audiobooks, stuff like that. So it's not all bad, but definitely there are a lot of weekends that we'll like wake up that Saturday and be like, why this weekend?
Next up, one thing that you may not really have been aware of is it's kind of hard to relate to people on a wider scale. Many of the people that we've talked to just kind of think that we're on this permanent vacation, which is just really not the case. We are working 40 to 60 hours, 80 hours a week sometimes, and just kind of weekend warriors in other places. It's always kind of funny to me when we pass by with relatives or friends or whoever, and they're like, hey, you're passing through, you're more than welcome to come stay with us. You could stay in a bed and have a shower. And it's like, I have both of those things. I'm okay.
We're good to go. This is our home, actually.
And, a lot of times when you're having conversations and catching up with people, they want to hear about your travel stories, but don't dwell on that too much because, like me specifically, my whole life is a travel story. And I don't think you're really doing any conversation that you're having justice by talking all about yourself. So maybe take a second and listen to them for a moment.
People want to talk to you about things that they can relate to, and they want to hear stories that they can relate to. So if you put it into the perspective that most people go on a vacation or a travel journey of some kind, maybe once or twice a year, and we're just like constantly on that. Sometimes it's just like, we're like, that's funny, but we'll just like have to toe the line between talking too much about our stories, basically.
Yeah, just don't dwell on yourself too much. Nobody cares about you as much as you do.
Okay, so another thing that's a little bit of an added challenge while on the road is that you're constantly relearning the basics. If you're living in your hometown, you get used to knowing where your favorite grocery store is, where your favorite coffee shop is, the gas station with the best prices near your house, whatever it is, the nearest gym. You're basically, when you're on the road, every month we move somewhere, I'm having to be like, okay, where's the nearest grocery store? And, I don't know about you, but like some grocery stores just like happen to seem to have better produce than others on a regular basis. And so I can't tell you how many times we've like tried multiple grocery stores in an area, and then it's like the third one we try, we're like, that one was a good one. Good thing we're leaving in a week.
Yeah, now you're on to the next place.
Yeah, I'm so glad we found this spot. Now let's go. So you're basically constantly just in a state of, I guess, basically being a new transplant, which has its perks. It brings out a certain level of like excitement for mundane things, I would say, but it also can be a little bit like imagine it's like a busy work week and you're like, I just need to go get some bread, or I just need tomatoes, like whatever it is, and you show up at the store and you're like, oh my god, this store's produce sucks, or like you're like turned around. I can't tell you how many times we've like showed up at a Walmart, which they're pretty consistent, but they'll like move departments depending on what store you're in, and there's so many times we'll like be walking through the store thinking we're headed to a section and we're like, that was the other Walmart that we were at, that's not at this one, like we need to go to the other side of the store. Like it can just be a pain in the butt at times. So it, like I said, it can be fun, but it can also just be a little bit annoying or a slight nuisance.
Not annoying. It's a learning experience. We're always learning.
Everything's an opportunity, right?
One thing that we haven't talked about yet is changing time zones. This, if you've ever experienced daylight savings time, you have a little bit of experience with this, but there's some pretty serious challenges with moving from this time zone to that time zone to that time zone, and potentially being in 3 different time zones in the course of a month, like
I don't know if we've ever moved that fast, but
but there was this most recent time crossing time zones. We had daylight savings time, so we fell back, and then we moved forward a time zone, so we went back 2 weeks later
again,
and then and
then the following 2, and then we were
and then 2 weeks later we moved ahead another time zone.
Yeah, that was rough.
Meanwhile, my full-time job is actually in mountain time, so while we're on the East Coast right now, I'm actually operating on a mountain time schedule. And not all remote jobs are really like flexible with, you could work 2 a.m. if you want to. Sometimes you have to be available for the hours of operation. And so my regular working schedule is somewhat like 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And there's a little bit of flexibility in that, but otherwise have to be available.
And when we were out on the opposite coast, you were getting up at like 6 a.m. to be ready for your 7 a.m. meeting. Long story short, it can be a little bit of a challenge just to even like remember what time zone we're in when we've like just recently moved. That little stint we were talking about where we like changed so many times, like we both felt like jet lagged and like so thrown off, and it felt like it didn't make any sense why we were so tired from it. And also, I mean, we both, I think at various points have made mistakes in like scheduling, thinking that we were in a different time zone, or not realizing, next week we're gonna be in that time zone actually, whoops. So it's a lot to keep track of sometimes.
Yeah, I think just making sure that whatever calendar you use is set to local time will probably set you up for the best success, because then you can just, ignore your brain and do what the computer tells you.
Well, be careful, because I've actually had my calendar not switch on me before. So.
Double check before you book it.
Yes. All right. So another thing that's a little bit of a challenge on the road that you might not think about is doctors, vets, dentists, all those types of appointments. Even if you have good insurance, that's great. And if it covers you everywhere, that's great too. We're in a great situation right now with our health insurance, but all that to say, it can still be an added challenge to find and get an appointment with a new doctor, a new dentist, what have you. There's so many doctors that legitimately will call just because we want to have like our annual, like, oh, we should have done our annual physical or whatever, and you want to just set up an appointment with somebody and they want you to, you know, declare them as your primary provider on your insurance, and you're like, well, I'm only going to be here a month, I don't really want to do that. Or, you know, if you're a new patient, a lot of doctors' offices won't get you in for weeks at a time, which
or even
like,
months.
Yeah, and you're like, well, I'm not going to be here by then, like, I'm sorry, too bad. Okay, so I can't tell you how many times, like, just for like simple appointments, whatever we've got to do, we've had to call so many places before we could find where we were going to go, and it just can be like it's just more of a headache. It's kind of one of those things that when you are established somewhere and you kind of can set up your doctors, your dentists, and you know where you're going when you need to make those appointments, it's just kind of, it's quick and easy, you know, it's one phone call, make the appointment, you're good to go. Not so much when you're on the road. It can be a pain in the butt, and, you know, to add to that, with Delilah's issues, finding a new vet for her can be a little bit stressful, and, you know, she's had such an extensive, you know, health history with her 2 surgeries and all that, you know, we show up somewhere and it's like they, you know, we're basically have to, at the appointment, just for like almost an hour, be like, okay, this is like her whole history. They're like, oh, she's really pink. You're like, yep, she's got a yeast over, we know, like, you know, like all these things that we're like, yep, we've already talked about it with our vet, like, we know, we're aware of like all the stuff. Like, I don't know, it can be time consuming is basically what it is.
All right, next up on our challenges today is the feeling of sense of urgency to really experience the place that you're in. You know, we see a lot of incredible places, and a lot of times you feel pressure to experience all that those places have to offer, which when you're working from 9 to 5, and, you know, even if you're staying there for a month, which just sounds like an eternity, like, why didn't you see everything this place has to offer? You know, it gets, you have other daily tasks that need to get done between the work weeks, and sometimes you need to catch up, and sometimes you just need to do nothing at all for your own mental well-being. So we'll kind of, you know, schedule we're not doing anything today, let's just relax.
Yeah, and then we'll still wake up on those days and be like, well, maybe we should go. Like, we kind of just burn ourselves out sometimes, and we'll try to take days to ourselves, but there's been many times that we've kind of just pushed it too hard and then been like, okay, maybe we need to slow down. Specifically, like last summer, we moved at such a breakneck pace. Like, there was a stint where we were only staying places for a week or two for a couple of different spots, and I mean, I don't know, like, I know I got super burnt out.
We were exhausted.
Yeah, and it was also just that added pressure, you know, and we would have to, you know, in order to see the things we wanted to see, we were going out on a lot of weeknights to try and see those things, which, you know, if you're having your regular work week, I doubt that you're going out like 3 times a week during the
work
week.
If you're only staying somewhere a week, that generally sounds like a solid amount of time to stay somewhere. But, you know, between 2 travel weekends and a full work week, going out on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or, you know, even 2 days of the week, I'd challenge you to show me one person living in a sticks and bricks who's going out that much during the work week.
If you can schedule your stays for longer, there's a lot of practicality to it. Don't just schedule your stay with just enough time to see everything. Schedule your stay with relaxation time in mind, and, you know, built-in time for if you have something breaks and you have to fix it, you need to add in that extra time. It's got to come from somewhere, and, you know, it's either going to come out of you taking a day off to actually relax or going to see something exciting in the area. All right, guys, that's pretty much it. That's 10 things that you might not have thought about before traveling full-time that are actually kind of challenges on the road.
We are constantly learning, and, you know, despite all of these negative aspects of it, we love it more than anything. And
100%. We wouldn't, I mean, we're very happy with our lifestyle that we've chosen, but we'd be lying if we said that it didn't come with some challenges of its own.
And even with being so stressed out at times, you know, I think there's a level of, if you're not feeling uncomfortable, then you're not pushing yourself to grow and do better. And it's important to keep that positive aspect even with the negative sides of your life. But, you know, we'll be here. We'll continue to post these cool videos. drop a like for us. We love hearing you guys' comments. And, as always, guys,
Thanks for traveling with us. Bye.